Digital 410 Productions proudly presents What's the Scuttlebutt Podcast with your host, Don Abernathy.
Hey everybody, Don Abernathy here. Before we start the show, I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us through 2018 and supporting the show. I'm excited to see where 2019 takes us. Hopefully by March we will have a public podcast studio so I can start having more people in. For the last year I've been recording this out of my house. And so it's a little hard to get people in and out of the studio when other people are here because, it interferes with everyone's lives. But thank you so much for everybody hanging out with us this year. For the final episode, I wanted to do something a little special. A while back, a listener of the show, Jerry Oxley, told me, hey, I've listened to the interviews you've done with vets and the people who lived during the war multiple times. But for the life of me, there's one interview I cannot make it through because the sound quality is so bad. And I kind of understood that when I posted it, but, it was one of the first interviews I did, and not only that, I did the interview at a beautiful home of a friend of ours, and as a lot of beautiful homes are, it's all marble, big cathedral ceilings, open spaces, which means echo, echo, echo. So a few days ago, I took the original podcast, I cut out all the nonsense, narrowed it down to strictly the interview, because originally the interview was spread over 2 episodes, so I've taken the interview and I've condensed it down to a single episode, and that is with Fritz Lindenbach. He was 5 or 6 years old when the war came to his town. He tells a great story about how Nazi rule changed everything in Germany, how the parents, had to be careful what they said around children because children didn't know any better and would go inadvertently, drop the dime on them, quote unquote, and possibly get them in trouble with the government. And he tells a story about when the Allies came and fought the Germans in front of his town, and he gets real emotional during that time. So this is a great interview. I think it's probably 75% better. I ran it through the system, I adjusted the levels, and all that good stuff. So Jerry, this one's for you. Thanks everybody so much for the support this year. If you want to continue to support the show, I did put up a new shirt. We have the new What's the Scuttlebutt with USMC camouflage cover M1 helmet, and a while back we also did the airborne helmet. And I'm working on some new shirts coming up in 2019. But anyhow, thank you all so much. You can find those shirts at whatsthescuttlebutt.com. That's scuttlebutt with D's instead of T's because scuttlebutt.com with the T's was already taken. If for some reason you can't find that, simply go to d-410.com. You can find it there. And if you didn't know, for some reason, if you've been downloading each episode onto your phone directly from the website, you can subscribe and have them downloaded or stream live via iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, as well as Google Music. So those are easier ways to find the show. Anyhow, enough of that. Let's get on with the interview. Thanks so much, and we'll see you all in 2019. Hey everybody, welcome to the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. I'm happy to have our second interview with Mr. Fritz Lindenbach. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Appreciate your time. Let's go back to the beginning. What town were you born in?
I've been born in Neckarhausen, which is a small town close to the big industrial city of Mannheim.
What year were you born?
I'm born in 1936.
1936. Now, obviously, in the late 30s, Germany was still living under the rules of the Treaty of Versailles, which had a huge impact on your economy, your gross domestic product, and, the morale of your country. Do you remember back then how the normal German citizen felt about what the Treaty of Versailles had done to your country and to the economy, and what it was like to work pretty much for nothing because all your money was being sent to France and to England. Inflation was through the roof. The Deutschmark was worth almost nothing.
Well, the biggest impact was, as you mentioned, the economy was down, which was also the reason in order for Adolf Hitler to become the leader. That has a lot to do. That was even the time where a lot of Germans immigrated in the United States as well. And what I remember, as I mentioned, I'm born in 1976. As a boy, we had we have a tough time to survive. It was the whole conversation was around food and what are we cooking tonight and tomorrow, and it was my childhood actually.
How many siblings did you have?
I had one more brother. and he was 11 years older, and he was in World War II on the Russian front, and he came back heavily injured, 80%.
At this time, though, when you're still a child, what did your parents do? What was your family doing to try to make a living or to figure out a way to survive?
Well, the reason for us to survive, this was what basically grew behind the house. That was our survival. Of course, we had pigs, we had goats, this is why we has been in a better position than the city people. The city people did not have those kind of options.
So you guys lived basically on a farm.
It's a small farm. It was not necessarily the main income. My father worked for the train at the time, but we still
you were able to supplement your food by growing and slaughtering your own animals.
Exactly. Yes.
As the years went by, as the 30s, got closer to the 40s, and 38 is when Germany invaded Poland.
Right.
As that time was building up and as Hitler was getting more and more power and things were changing, obviously you're young at that time, but do you kind of remember the stress or, how people in general, the way they acted changed? Was it detectable how people were changed, how they were acting, or whether they were scared or are they excited for the promised future? Because Hitler promised a lot to people because you guys were working so hard, your money was going away, and he presented a scapegoat, he presented ideas, and in the early years, he presented make-work jobs, such as the building of the Autobahn, and all these things. So he was promising jobs, he was starting to deliver. Superinflation hadn't happened yet, so people didn't realize that these jobs he was making really didn't produce financially for the country, but he was paying you guys. The jobs were starting to appear.
Right. You are 100% right. What he actually promised, he did what he promised at the very beginning. That was the first time where mothers became money when they get birth to babies and stuff like this. Mm-hmm. That was new. He was the inventor, as you said, the Autobahn. He was the inventor of the Beetle, Volkswagen.
Yep.
That was
him and Ferdinand Porsche.
Exactly. That was a family car, 2 adults and 2 children. That was his idea, and he did actually. And the people, as a matter of fact, in the 30s, where a lot of people, Germans, moved out of the country in the United States, they even some came back to Germany because it was a time where the United States was not in best shape as well.
Yeah, we were also deep into our depression.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I can imagine if you're a German immigrant in America and there's no jobs to be had.
Exactly.
And you start seeing newspaper clippings, letters from home saying, hey, things are getting better over here.
Yeah.
We're producing jobs.
Some of them moved back again to Germany.
Yeah.
They got back. Yeah, they got out of the country and they came back again. But it changed soon after again. Hitler started on all fronts. There was Stalin, Mussolini, and the English Prime Minister, and Hitler. That was the 4 who had, and Roosevelt of the United States, who had those meetings. But Hitler was not the honest guy. He was a bad guy.
No, absolutely. And as he gained more and more power, he started creating more absurd laws.
Absolutely.
Like one of the first laws he passed was that no female Jew between the ages of 12 and I think 26, basically childbearing ages, could work in the house of a Gentile, if you will.
Yeah.
And through later research after the war, some speculate, and I kind of speculate, the reason for that law.
Yeah.
Looking back at it now, it seems like a lot of the things Hitler did early on were due to self-hatred of himself.
Right.
He strongly believed that he was a bastard child of a Jewish girl who worked for his father.
Yeah.
And so later on, the first law he passes, if that same law existed when he was a child, he would have never have been born. A lot of these things he did as he got more power, a lot of these rules basically would have prevented him from ever coming to power to begin with.
Exactly. Yeah. I remember as a child sitting in the stroller. Mm-hmm. I remember this very, very vividly. Sitting in the stroller, and I came, the Neckar River, Rhine River, Neckar River. My town was on one side, and Ladenburg is over 2,000-year-old Roman town on the other side.
Okay.
And this is where a lot of Jews lived in this town, and they had their own businesses as
Sure.
well. And I remember where the Jewish action took place, where the Nazis have gotten in the houses. That even I see still as a child see where they threw furniture out of the houses, out of second and third floor and stuff. You know.
When they're clearing out their apartments and
exactly
putting them in.
Well, and they put them away as well.
They were sending them off to ghettos and then later on concentration camps.
Exactly, yeah.
Obviously, you're a young child, but you remember seeing those sort of actions. Do you remember if there were any prominent Jewish people in your town, people who had prominent positions that just vanished one day and people just kind of...
From one day to another, yeah. There also, I still remember neighbors, which was, it was always dangerous if people had children. And if parents or growing up people discussed something about the regime and all this kind of thing and spoke about, if they said something negative in front of children, and children that talk to each other or mention something with neighbor children, and their children mention something to their parents, they took them away.
Or their teachers.
They took them away. They were teachers, they were business people, prominent people, as a matter of fact. Yeah, it was the Gestapo actually who took them away. Yeah. I remember when my parents been talking about, and my parents never had anything to do with Hitler and this ideal and all this kind of stuff. Absolutely. Whenever I came close, they stopped talking. Yeah. Oh yeah. They always kept this very secretive, you know. Yeah.
Well, once again, because you're a young age,
but
you're going to school, you're being told, hey, if you hear people saying these type of things, you need to report it to us. And they knew that as a child, you didn't understand the severity of what was going on.
See, me as a child, I had a totally different upbringing, like probably children now. I was 6 years old when I got to school. I graduated when I was 14. That was the 8 years schooling at the time, through high school. And all the children, they were prepared. I learned my trade when I was 14 years old. Start with 6. And the last 4 years, the first 4 years was ground school. The last 4 years, it depends on your grades. Then I got into a higher gymnasium. And I learned English already in those days. Strange enough.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And my brother, I know a lot through my brother because he was 11 years older. He built even an airplane.
Did he?
He built an airplane in the school. He built an airplane, and as a school child,
that's crazy.
This is crazy. Yeah.
To think that a school would have the tools and the technology available to build a plane is one thing, but to have the resources and the children smart enough to make it happen.
And not only the boys, also the girls. They had to learn how to knit, how to sew, how to do. They had every day at least an hour or an hour and a half, like schooling in practice, how to survive, how to do things in their later life and stuff, you know, how to learn. Yeah.
As you grew older and you progressed through school, do you remember the indoctrination through the schools getting worse as far as the Fuhrer, you know, the Third Reich, your dominance over other people? Was the schools really heavy into that indoctrination, or did a lot of them try to stay away from it but do what they had to do to meet the requirements of the government?
They stayed away. They stayed away. They even been through so much before and had been very careful. They stayed away very, very, very much. It started losing up then later, where Erhard became the first leader in Germany after that, or Adenauer, as a matter of fact. And this is where the whole thing started changing, you know. Yeah. Well, when we had gotten to school, we have to stand up. The teacher was the one who says Heil Hitler. And the pupils, we have to say the same thing. And we even sing the song, you know, the national anthem, you know,
sure.
Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles in the world, you know. This brainwash stuff there, you know, yeah.
your brother was 11 years older than you.
Yeah.
And he went off to fight in the war.
Yeah.
Was he forced to join, or did he?
He was forced to join.
Yeah, because I knew most of the Weimar Republic's military was forced to join.
Yeah.
Because by the outline of the Treaty of Versailles, the army could only have, I think, 100,000 soldiers or less.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe 50,000, and so I guess they would be forced to join.
Yeah, he was in Arbeitsdienst, what Cell mentioned. That was the beginning. They have to go through very tough schooling before they even get into the military. That was schooling. It was north of Frankfurt. There was I remember I have been there with my mother. We visit my brother there. You know, we could see him a couple of days.
So he actually went off to like a schooling before he went into the military, almost like a boarding school.
Before military schooling, yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And then he was, well, we lost a lot of times contact about him. He was later on with a very special division. They called this kind of division SA-Standarte Feldherrnhalle. That was a major division who only fight different territoriums and very, very secret missions and this type of thing.
More like clandestine stuff.
Exactly. It was SS battalion, so to speak.
Okay, so they were like a sub-battalion of the SS.
Yes. Yeah.
I would imagine as the war progressed on and we rolled into 42, 43, shortages probably got more dramatic as far as aluminum, silk, food, things of that nature.
Yeah.
At what point? I mean, you're still pretty young. In the 30s, Germany was starting to come up. The economy, things were seeming to be better.
Mm-hmm.
But then as the war progressed, obviously more of the resources were getting allocated to the war.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you guys started to feel some of the same shortages that the people in America were feeling when it came to, metal, silk shortages, food rations, and things like that.
Yeah.
Did they have food rations to supplement the hyperinflation? Because, I mean, a loaf of bread was crazy amounts of money back then.
Of course. Well, first of all, what we had in Germany, we had like food stamps, so to speak.
Food stamps, okay.
It's a type of food stamps, but you only can get it certain days and certain times. And you have to cut out a stamp that was a whole page of like...
kind of like postage stamps.
Yeah. You have to cut them out,
mm-hmm. But they're only good like Monday, Thursday, and Sunday.
Exactly. That was the fish, that was for the meat, that was for this, for certain things. You could only buy a pair of shoes per year, something like this. That was all regulated, yeah.
Okay.
And that was wordless unless it's been announced tomorrow or on another 2 or 3 days, there is this what you can get and stuff. But you still have to pay for.
Yeah.
You still have to pay for it. It is not free. But you could only get it a certain days,
So that stamp didn't give you the food. It gave you the right to purchase the food if you had the money. You weren't entitled. That stamp wasn't a form of currency. That was just your permission to buy said item.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you could have all the stamps you want, but if you didn't have the Deutschmarks to pay for it,
you could. Exactly. Yeah.
When the war started to get closer to Germany,
mm-hmm.
and the Allies started to do bombing air raids, did any of those air raids happen close to the vicinity of the towns you grew up in? Could you hear them off in the distance? Did it become normal to see planes flying over in formation?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, as I said, my hometown was about 8 miles away from the city of Mannheim. And Mannheim is a very high industrial city. They had the MWM, which manufactured, even by now, still exists, the big ocean liner diesel engines.
Okay.
Then Mercedes. And there was even in between the city of Mannheim and my town, there was the main railroad track, Berlin, Munich, Stuttgart, Frankfurt, which was a very interesting target.
Yeah, between the manufacturing plants and the train depots, you guys are basically...
Yeah.
high priority target.
Absolutely, inclusive the Autobahns. As a matter of fact, I remember a lot of times when there was a signal where the train had to stop because there was a train station a couple of miles further down, and when the train stopped, all the passengers had to go out of the train and had to go under the train. Under the train.
In case they were strafed by air?
Yeah. In case they're, we knew always, as a matter of fact, when we got bumped, we knew except my brother came one time. He was a sharpshooter and everything. He was fantastic in whatever he did in his life. And then he got a couple of days vacation for benefit and stuff, And he came one time and had a whole list from A to C. And I don't know how the Germans find out whenever they came from England, the bombers, the B-22s, the B-18s, when they know exactly where they're going to. And we had a radio. We had only one outlet in the whole house.
Okay.
When the radio was on, my mother could not iron, there was no radio.
Sure.
I mean, this is the way it's been at the time, But whenever they said to the radio, Siegfried, Siegfried 7, I never forget this in my life. Siegfried, Siegfried 7. This is where Mannheim was on target.
Really?
That was the target of Mannheim, yeah. When they came in formations, yeah.
Now, I'm sure at that point, when you guys became a target-rich environment for the Allies, everything had to be pitch black.
Oh, yeah. Well, it has to be pitch black, even if there was no. I remember when we drove a bike at night, we have to tape the lamp on the front. There was only
a little slit.
A little slit, so you could barely see.
Same with the cars.
So there is no target to the airplanes, Yeah. Cars the same, yeah. But there was hardly any cars anyway,
Sure. As the war progressed and Russia and the Allies started to come into Germany, did any of that ground combat ever get near your town, or did you guys primarily suffer from air raids?
There was ground fighting. There was ground fighting, and I remember with my uncle, he was in World War I, and he had some combat experience,
sure,
so to speak. And me as a boy, I always stood next to him, and he was the one who taught me, see over there and there. And I said this earlier, that was such a dumb thing, where the Americans came in. They blew up bridges. Mm-hmm. Bridges in my hometown, from my hometown to this Ladenburg, to this 2000 Roman town.
The Germans would blow them up as they retreated.
Before the Americans came in.
To slow down the advance of the Allies.
To slow down.
To try to get them stuck in that river.
And the Americans came in and built the pontoon bridge in 2 hours, right next to the bridge.
Yep, the engineers would come in and build a bridge. So
the tanks that got over the pontoon bridges with tanks,
And so essentially blowing up the bridges really did nothing to slow the advancement down over about 2 hours.
It was a total nonsense.
Yeah.
It was a total nonsense, yeah. And we saw even because we were lucky enough, that was the last house of the town where we lived at the time. Mm-hmm. And we could look all the way down to the city of Mannheim, and we could see where the Americans had gotten across the Lachs, where the bridge was, blew up, where the Americans walked across the Lachs, There were some Lachs because the Neckar River had high water and low water. And in order to keep the water level so the boats could go back and forth, they have to raise and lower the
water level?
The water level, yeah. So they came across, and there was a dam right there on the Neckar River, and this is where they positioned themselves. Okay. There was a fight in front of our house.
Really?
There was which we saw and there were the Americans. They've been apart approximately maybe 2 kilometers, something like this. They fought and fought and fought until all the Germans got killed.
Was this days, hours, weeks?
It was approximately 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
Something like this. There were maybe 150 Germans or something like this. It was ridiculous. And I'll never forget this. My uncle and me, as a boy, we been out in the attic and could look. There was the Germans and there were the Americans.
So you guys pretty much spent that 3 weeks in the attic.
Well,
or basement.
This is, you could not leave the house.
Yeah,
It was much too dangerous. And shooting, constantly shooting. There is also a lot of Americans who lost their life as well.
Yeah.
I still remember with the Jeep where they hauled them to the cemetery, where they're laying dead on the back of the Jeep and stuff like this, a couple of. And I still remember very well also where the Germans, there may be 10, 15 left. And it was right there where the railroad track was, what I mentioned earlier, the railroad track. And there lived a family. There was a gate where you could cross the railroad track. There was a gate with a house, and there lived a family in there. And we, I got to be careful, not getting sentimental.
That's all right.
It's such a unbelievable memory where guys called for help and no one came out of the house and helped. Oh,
it's too dangerous.
Yeah. My uncle, but as I said, my uncle he was in World War I. He could not understand this. He was furious,
Beside himself.
Yeah, because we heard those soldiers yelling for help, and they did not go and come out of the house and helped. Let them die.
So it was the family inside the house.
Yeah, exactly.
And they got probably hit with bullets that went through the walls.
Well, they've been. I mean, they all had little bunkers. The Americans on their side and there. Even I remember where I, as a boy, I know how to explode a hand grenade. Can you believe this? With 8, 9 years old, the little egg-shaped hand grenades. We pulled the ring and threw it away. We even know 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. This is what they used to be in. What they used in direct face-to-face combat. They throw them across the those egg-shaped hand. And the Americans, they let them by the truckloads. They let them just be. They even got, because there was the Neckar River right there. When they got fishing, but they throw those grenades in the water, You wouldn't believe how many fish came up.
They just throw the grenades in the water and the fish come up from the shock.
Oh, I tell you, there was, and later on, there's a lot of people who still got killed, where the grenades has been still active, and they've been bathing and stuff like this, and sometimes.
Somebody swimming and.
Yeah, some blow up once in a while, yeah.
After the 3 to 4 weeks of the combat around the village, obviously, the Allies pushed back the Weimar Republic.
Right.
How was the feeling? I mean, was there some indoctrination on the part of the German government to try to scare you, make you guys afraid of the Americans, much like the Japanese did?
No, not at all.
Or were you guys just finally glad this is over? Was it relief?
That was a relief. That was a relief unbelievable. Everybody experienced, if you live long enough in the system like this, you don't know what freedom means and what it is. But that was like, you live in a different world. You live in a different world. And I remember the Americans, they had a general, General Hoover, and he introduced, that was the first mission what they did, where the Americans came in, they introduced for children to have a daily meal in the schools.
So they basically, when we came in and kind of set up a government, we initiated a food program for school to make sure that the children at least had one meal a day.
That was the first mission. We had to go with some of a little pot or something and a spoon,
like a mess kit.
Yeah, that was hanging on my school purse, and then. The ladies cooked the meals in the schools, and I remember I even that was my first baking experience as a boy in school.
First experience baking as a child was
not only that, not to scale the ingredients.
Okay.
To scale the ingredients and bring it to the baker. And the next morning, on the way to school, I picked up the baking goods with another one or two guys. Then we picked up the baking. This is when we got the cocoa drink.
Yep, Coca-Cola.
Cocoa milk with cocoa powder.
Oh, okay, cocoa.
Cocoa, yeah. And one of the buns what the baker cooked, Yeah. Was a very, very nice thing, Yeah. Well, the first groups who came in the town, I remember that, they came with big tanks and stuff, and we as kids, we got scared,
Sure.
And they like to scare us, we've been standing on the wall, So I said, and they came right, touched us with the big tanks, and laid on, And the whole street on the other side where I lived, this is where all the people had to move out.
Okay.
And the Americans got in those private houses, and the houses with the best equipped kitchens, there were probably maybe 12, 15 houses, and the one with the best kitchens, they are the one who cooked for the guys, for the GIs, for the American soldiers,
The mess hall.
I still remember where I saw the first pancake. Stack pancakes. Oh God! And you've been looking the pancake. You wouldn't believe this. What if you go through times,
Sure.
and all of a sudden, pancake.
More pancakes and
Yeah.
well, just the amount of food in general.
And those guys, those GIs, they had some fun with us,
Sure.
And they said, hey, boxing, then we box for a chewing gum,
Hershey bar.
Hershey bar, and they got chocolate every other day. They got
New rations of chocolate.
Exactly.
Cigarettes and soda.
Oh, that was a hard thing. Cigarettes, Oh yeah.
Yeah, because the American cigarette was such a better quality than
Well,
the
there was
German
no
cigarette.
Well, they used the tobacco what grows on the field.
Sure.
And dry them and they try to ferment them with all kinds. I remember my brother when he invented a machine who cuts the tobacco. The leaves has been rolled up. With some kinds, I don't know, with fix taste and flavor and stuff like this. And they got in the pipe and under the front, they has gotten a knife swirling around them. And this is the kind of stuff what those people smoke.
Yeah.
It stunk like crazy, Oh
Pretty
my
much smoke in
God.
their front yard.
Yeah, yeah.
As the war wound down and the fighting stopped, like you said, you had about 3 to 4 weeks of combat plus the bombing missions in your area.
Right.
How much of your town was pretty much wiped out? I mean, how much of it was decimated?
My town was not wiped out at all. We had a couple of hits. Even my house was hit, but by the German flag,
Sure.
for the German grenade, because we have. I mean, that was a nightly show, so to speak, where the planes at night choose each other, and in the spotlight, they've been shooting the flag. We had 2 flag stations around the town, and they missed those airplanes. We got almost directed almost, and we've been sitting in the shelter just behind right there. Yeah.
How long, or what was the post-war era like? You had all these installations. You guys were under extreme government rule for so long. Now the war is pretty much wound up, and it's time to try to get back to normal, but it's been so long since you had normal, plus some of the damage done to the towns
Right.
and all the government installations. Was the rebuilding time, was it slow? Was it quick?
Fast.
Very fast?
Fast. 10 years after the war. 10 years after the war. You never know there was one.
I would imagine living under such a tight rule for 7 to 8 years, once
yeah.
that chokehold's taken away,
people just they flourish. They have nothing holding them back. But two,
let me say something, and
sure.
I want you not misunderstand me.
Okay.
What I say. What has been going was what the nation has been going through in all those years, where Hitler was the leader and doing all those difficult times. What the Germans have to learn, that was what no nation in the whole world has been going through. Discipline, a must. The whole nation was marching, even from children that hardly could walk, they had to march. And I remember, because my brother was 11 years older, they had the Jugendvolk, that is like a children's army, so to speak.
Hitler Youth?
Hitler Youth. They've been in sport. They've been in everything. And this is actually the attitude what helped Germany after to build up Germany in relatively no time. And my opinion is still, there is still something left, or even now in those days, is still something left. Or even people who are a little younger than me, who never really did not know this, but I still can tell the way we has gotten then into in our trades, how to learn the trade, and that was still
the work ethic.
The work ethic, exactly. You cannot change this from one thing to another, you know.
Sure.
And I mean, Lee is in business, and what is in business for upon discipline, being there daily, doing whatever needs to be done. A lot of people who don't even know what you're talking about, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And this is what helped Germany after the war. Not to mention anything else, but the discipline and the speed.
And I can understand now wholeheartedly, because even on this side of the pond, you had all these young 18, 19-year-old American men coming home, and so many of them were in the military,
right,
that when they went back to work, whether it was factory, whether it was schooling, right, they had obviously a different level. They still had that same discipline from being in the military, that our whole society operated smoother, operated better.
Yeah.
And then you had their children kind of rebel against them in the 60s and 70s. Yeah. And things have kind of gotten socially a little more, let's say, lax.
Yeah.
Because fewer and fewer American citizens have that sort of military background, the discipline, whether it's military or Boy Scouts,
right,
or just anything.
Yeah.
As we move along, more and more people are just let me be and do my own thing.
Right.
That it really does affect society as a whole.
Yeah.
And so when you look back on that generation, whether it's Germany, whether it's the United States, Great Britain, anytime you have a huge portion of your population go through that sort of training and discipline, where you're basically realize my actions count, and I play a role in this venture, whether it's operating a business, whether it's being in the military, or being a stand-up person in your community, you realize what I'm doing impacts other people.
This is essential in those areas, absolutely. Yeah. As you remember, that had to do with performance as well, physical, mentally, psychological, in all areas. And in 1936, that's where the Olympic used to be in Germany. Yep. And
Jesse Owens.
Pissed
off everybody.
Not
only the Americans.
How many 4 gold medals, or maybe or 6 or something like this? Yeah. That was the biggest downfall for this.
Oh, especially when you're in Germany and you have a maniacal leader trying to tell everybody that we're the superior race. Yeah. And not only are we the superior race, but we have the most superior people.
Exactly.
The Aryans.
Exactly.
And then to have a black man from America come over and just decimate everything.
Exactly.
That's the hugest egg on your face ever. I can imagine I can imagine the meetings that they had, and I'm sure somebody at the Olympic Committee had to pay a price for some of these things.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
There are some people who lost their heads, I guarantee you, because this happens, Yeah.
Well, it's amazing to think that here we are in 2018, over in North Korea, they're going through a very similar thing as far as the indoctrination goes, but they're raised to believe that this guy's not only a leader, but he's their God.
Right.
That he makes the sun come up, the sun go down.
Yeah.
And I'm sure with your experience of growing up in Germany at the time, you can probably kind of not relate, but have a sense of what some of the citizens of North Korea are going through as far as indoctrination, the overpower, the rule, the lack of freedom.
Yeah.
But as you said, if you live in that time, you really don't know what you're missing until you have it.
Exactly. Yep. I just had a conversation with somebody the other day, and what I not want to get in politics and anything else, but I've been through fiery and fears and stuff like this already in my
absolutely.
And I guarantee you, if anybody in the world would know what it means war, there would be no war. And as far as I'm concerned, anything what happened in the world, in order to prevent a war, is the right thing to do, regardless if it's this party against whatever. War is the worst things what can happen. It's undescribable. How there's millions and millions of innocent people, children. This is unbelievable.
Well, that's part of the reason why we do this podcast, these interviews, is because I'm only 40 years old, but in the last 37 years, I can tell a difference. We no longer say, learn from history or we're bound to repeat it.
Yeah.
Especially now in the last few years, especially here in America, when a group of people don't like something that happened in the history, instead of educating people to prevent it from happening again, they're trying to erase it all.
Yeah.
And if you erase something 60 years from that point, how do you prevent it from happening? Because people don't believe that it happened to begin with.
Exactly.
And so it's very, very important, and that's why I do a lot of the things I do at museums, is to not only remind people and educate people that the war happened, but the reason the war happened and why it's important to study and know your history so that these things don't happen again.
Yeah.
And it concerns me greatly that, especially with these college kids,
Right.
instead of confronting something that's scary and learning from it, they want to turn their backs and have somebody sweep it away.
Yeah.
And that's a very dangerous thing.
Absolutely.
Especially now that our history books are becoming digital.
Yeah.
I'm all for if you want to have digital fiction books, but we need to keep our history books in a hard copy because digital's too easy to edit.
Exactly.
If you don't like something, you can just highlight it, delete, save, and it's gone. Whereas if you have your hard copy books in your libraries, in people's homes, the truth will always remain.
Right. I tell you, I love America, but in all areas. I just have a problem with the foreign policy and diplomacy a little bit. Ask the question, who wants to fight America? Nobody. Why not make and adjust your foreign policy and diplomacy on this notion? If you push a crazy guy like this Mr. Whatever in North Korea, if you push this guy,
Kim Jong-un,
if you push this guy in the corner where he loses his life, he's doing dumb things.
Yeah.
There is no question about it. This is what he's going to do. He has nothing to lose anymore. This is what he's doing. This is ideal, and I think America should say more not what they want, what they don't want, would be the better way to come to a more understandable diplomacy. You know.
Couldn't agree with you more. After the war, and as you got older, I know at some point you became a pilot, but let's talk about your growing up in post-war Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go on college? What path did your life take, and how was it affected by the things that you had gone through? Obviously, you know, grew up in hard times. You knew what it was like to live through hell, and it probably gave you a greater outlook and realized everything else in the future is a gift and not to squander it.
Right.
What did you do after you graduated high school and you started down the road as a young adult?
Well, this is another thing where Germany has, just for instance, America uses millions for apprenticeship programs.
Okay.
Millions for apprenticeship programs. Germany use billions for apprenticeship programs. That's the difference.
Educating their citizens in a skilled
This
trade.
is the difference. You hire someone, it doesn't matter in what trade he is, where he comes from. If he has a master's degree and you hire him as a plumber, as it is, you don't have to explain him nothing. He knows it.
Mm-hmm.
He's been through this. You know, this is basically what you. This is the. It's not only that. Also, the way I am and what I achieved, I was raised for success. Period. That was my mother. That was my mother. In experience, she came home one time and said, "I just want you to know I was 19 years old. On Monday begins your preschooling for your master's degree." I said, "Mother, I cannot do this." She said, "Do you want to tell your mother what you cannot do and not do? On Monday you go to school." I said, "Mother, I have to have 5-year apprenticeship after my 3 years to learn my trade. Then I have the 5 years before I be eligible even to make a master's degree." You cannot tell your mother, "I was talking to your boss where you work for, and I was in all the institutions." If your boss and dare say he is capable to do it, you can do it. The only difference is you get not handed out your master degree. You get handed out after those 5 years. But this has nothing to do. Fritz is going to school on Monday. Simple as that. Case closed. No more question. That's it. Yeah. And this is the way this is my answer to, this is the way I was raised.
Yeah.
Either you do something perfect or you don't do it.
Because you're putting your name on it.
My mother's name was on my father's name.
Yeah.
Think about it. This is the worst thing for parents if children embarrass them in the public. Horrible. I was with my daughter, there was no car available. Later on I had bikes and all kinds of stuff. My daughter, she was approximately 3 years old. We've been driving with the train. The train was, all seats were taken. There came a older lady from the market, heavy, like and all kinds of stuff. And I said to my daughter, "Let's get out." She said, "No." And on the other side was sitting a young mother with her child also. She said, "Your daughter doesn't have to get up. She paid too." And I squeezed my daughter in her leg, you know. You wouldn't believe how quick she was up, you know. And let this old lady sit. Come on, you know. There's in little things, you know, which has a huge impact. I guarantee she still talk about this in those days, and she's already 55, 54, you know, my daughter, you know, yeah.
When I was younger and my parents were split up and they were trying to find their way in life, when I was 2 until about 7, my grandmother and my grandfather raised me, and my grandfather was in the war. And it was in Kentucky, and so there was a lot of yes ma'am, no ma'am taught to us. Mm-hmm. Fast forward 38 years, now when I'm at a grocery store or an office and I say yes ma'am, no ma'am, that is so foreign to people. They always ask me, were you in the military? I'm like, no, I was just raised by people who taught me courtesy and how to talk to my elders and to how to have decorum in society.
Absolutely.
And the fact that something as simple as yes ma'am or no sir to a complete stranger, that they are almost offended by it because they're not used to it. It's very concerning.
When I listen sometimes to anything on TV or so, that makes me so mad when they always say me and. I learned this as a child already. You always mention yourself at the end, last at the end, you know.
Yep.
This is so crazy, you know.
Well, and they have actually changed that in the education system now, where it is no longer wrong to say me and Bob instead of Bob and I.
Yeah.
So I understand later in your life you became a professional soccer player. At what age did you get the soccer bug? Were you very, very young? Obviously soccer is predominant in Europe, in that side of the world. At what age did you start playing soccer?
As soon as I could walk.
As soon as you could walk?
My father was a great soccer player.
Because all you need is a ball and a little bit of
My
grass.
brother was wordless. My brother had nothing to do with sport. He was my brother was a learner more so. I did not like to learn a lot, theoretically. And I'm not a reader either. You know. I have a hands-on. I'm artistic more so. My brother was, but soccer, well, I was guided in soccer as I said, as soon as I could walk, you know. Yeah. I have thousands of pictures, you know. Oh my God.
How old were you when you were actually hired on to a professional soccer team?
19, 20
years old?
Yeah. I was even popular before I had gotten to the United States in 1960. Even before that, I have the things over there which says in the newspaper, Fritz Lindenbach is going to America. I mean, I was very well known in advance already, you know. Yeah.
What team did you play for when you came here?
Here I played, well, that was actually, I played for Cape Horn, as a matter of fact. But my concentration over here was not necessarily anymore on soccer. That was business oriented. This is how I came over here too, you know. I was represented from my ex-company to open a bakery over here. And that was actually my mission, you know. But the problem, we find out the problem was that we could never, sadly I have to say, I have never met anybody here in America. And I had a couple of different jobs, where I really could learn something from, you know.
You never had a true mentor over here?
No. And I've been in all kinds of schooling, in culinary school, in decorating school, you know, that is nothing what I miss this, I have to say. I miss this a lot. The same like flying. I miss it, you know. But from one day to another, you know, I have no more obligation, you know.
At what age did you become a pilot?
I became a pilot in 81.
Over in Germany or over here?
Here? In the United States, yeah.
Did you fly commercially or
no?
Just
only private pilot, but I also have the instrument rating. Yeah, that was another experience. I was in San Augustine with a lady at the time, and the weather has gotten bad. And then I said, let's go, we have to take off, you know. And then I gave her the sectional, I said, can you take a look? Then I looked over, she had her thing upside down. And then at the same token, I heard the tower talking. I was over the airport. I was over the airport in Orlando, I tell you. And then I said, well, large, you know, the best thing, this is what I learned in life too, common sense. I would never believe, Lee, how less people have common sense. I I thought this is what the majority of people have, common sense, No, I was so dead wrong, This is what helped me at the time. I did not answer, of course, at the time, but the tower talked to me. But I thought, now we're going to fly west. The hell with it. Go into golf. Yeah. This is where you'll be safe, That's what I did, So I got out of it. I landed in Fort Myers. That's it. Instrument rating. That was my, for instrument rating. Which is a difficult process. It's not easy. You really have to learn for instrument rating. Yeah.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. As a child growing up, even more back then, you were taught to respect your elders. Never in a million years did you think that so many adults were so goddamn stupid. It's like, as a child, you thought, well, he's an adult. He's got to know what he's talking about. I got to listen to him. And now that you're an adult, you're looking around like, everybody's stupid.
Yeah.
Unreliable, undependable.
Some people...
How are these people alive? How are they taking care of children?
Exactly. There are some people that say something, there is not even an answer to it.
Yeah.
They say something so stupid, Why you do this? Oh, God, yeah. Common sense. Oh, boy.
Well, common sense and the ability to even just put on the appearance that you're in control of a situation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what that situation is. Perfect example. I was at a big box home goods store.
Yeah.
I needed a part for my sink.
Yeah.
Employee was walking my way. I asked him, hey, where can I find this?
Yeah.
I work in this department. And scurried off.
Oh, God.
Now, I've worked in those positions. What you say is, sir, I'm not quite sure. However, once I'm done with this customer, I will find out that answer and we'll get you taken care of.
Yeah.
Even if you're not in control, at least put up the appearance.
Yeah.
Not just,
And I learned also, this is where intelligence comes into play. There are a lot of smart people around.
Mm-hmm.
But if they are not intelligent, they talk so many dumb things and never know when to shut up. Intelligent people, they don't have to be smart. They know when they have to shut their mouth. This is the difference. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. This has to do with intelligence. They can be forever not educated, but they know when to shut up.
Exactly. The first millionaire I've ever worked for, I was in California. And he told me, you know what your problem is? He's like, you don't listen to respond. You wait to talk. And when you're waiting to talk, you're not listening to what you're being told. You're not learning anything because you're going through what you want to say in your head while that other person is talking. He said, shut up, listen, process, and then respond.
Exactly.
Don't
interrupt anybody when they talk. Let them talk and let them talk. The more they talk, the more you learn.
And don't have your answer ready before their talk is done, because you're not replying. You're just giving an excuse.
Yeah, right. This is crazy.
If there's something that you want to get out to the new generation, anything that you learned from your experiences living in Germany, especially during the wartime, I mean, you firsthand witnessed the horrors that men can do to one another. If there was a message that you want to get out to people, what would that message be?
Education. And listen to people who know more than you do. Basically. It's my
Well said. About 10 years ago, I stumbled across the realization. In my opinion, the biggest joke that God has played on man, no matter how old you are, when someone older than you tells you, hey, don't do that, I've done it, the outcome's not what you're going to want it to be. It doesn't matter if they're 19 and you're 15, they're 40 and you're 30, they're 60 and you're 50. More often than not, you think, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. I'm younger, we know what's going on. And people don't listen to somebody who has more life experience than they do and who's been there. It seems no matter what age you are, you feel that you're know more, you're smarter, and you'll figure it out for yourself. And I think that is a horrible way to go through life.
Absolutely. Anybody has the option to meet very smart and intelligent people and then not do it. Why does the drug problems is such a big issue in this opioid problem in this country? Why do they have to try everything and know exactly what the problem is going to be, Why they have to, this always goes in the same direction, actually, My old uncle, I mentioned earlier, who was in World War I, he always said, he was a very simple, normal, upbringing human being. Knows what's right, did in his life whatever anybody normally is doing and stuff like this. He built his own house and that family. He always said, I am so smarter than they. I said, Uncle, why do you say this? He says, because I'm older. He says, I'm older. Yeah. He was a smart man, really.
And I think that's one of the other downfalls to Western society is we don't put the value and importance on our seniors as other cultures do.
Yeah.
It almost seems that, ironically, the more quote-unquote primitive the society is, the more importance and quality they put on their elders so they can learn what they've learned, whereas more the quote-unquote civilized or progressive people or societies, they just, once again, I'm younger, I know more, I'll figure it out on my own. And once again, that's a very dangerous thing.
Absolutely.
Because not only are you losing history, you're losing knowledge.
Yeah.
You're losing life experience.
Yeah. You block yourself from being open, Yeah.
You're doing yourself a great disservice by not learning from other people, and especially more successful people.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like people have such shame
Yeah.
when their life isn't where they quite want it to be, but instead of learning from more successful people and trying to be around more successful people to learn, to take that knowledge in, they would rather be the king of the less successful people. Instead of learning stuff, they can just feel better about themselves because I'm doing better than X, Y, and Z. Instead of being the guy at the low end, trying to learn from these people to figure out how to advance their life.
See, this is something where I have to say, in Germany I believe we have the best program when it comes down to trades and stuff like this. This has nothing to do. The people they're as smart and not as smart than anywhere else. Just the program is a different one. You get into a program, you get tested, constantly tested. You get and this is very important. They wanna get out of the black work, working under the table. They wanna eliminate this under the table working, And what they try to do, that's been a few years ago, they tried to eliminate master degrees in certain trades.
Okay.
That was the dumbest thing what they have done. And they reversed it again. But after it's been reversed, it's another problem because they don't agree to the reversal, So this is but they're getting there again where they're supposed to be. Tests is important. There is no question about it.
So it would seem, like you said, they, instead of trying to encourage or to make people work for the master degree, well, instead of making them feel bad because they're not able to succeed, we'll just get rid of the master degree. So that everyone can achieve.
They lower the whole standard of all trades,
And then that technically, if now no one can succeed because you can't get to that level of education. And I would agree with you. I have quite a few German clients in my business world. And I work on computers and networking for a living. I go to the American counterpart and I ask for some information, whether it's a password, whether it's something to do with their network. They don't know. I ask my German clients, they always say 1 second. They go get a book. They get that book, everything's written in there. Almost to a T. Every German client I have everything's documented, everything's exactly where they know they have. And so it's just so much easier to work with because they have that education or just the design, the importance on documentation, research, and just making it easier on yourself, because if this is information you need, why not have it? Why not know where it is and be more diligent about it?
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of see that clearly that through your guys' school system and the reliance on the education and the overabundance and the standard, if you will. I mean, it's one thing the German people have always been known for is the amount of perfection you guys put in your work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people still say German stuff's over-engineered.
Yeah.
How you over-engineer something, I don't know, because you're basically perfecting it. Now, when it came down to the war, in the cases of your tanks and your airplanes, when you're quote-unquote over-engineering stuff, it takes longer to produce that because you're perfecting it, whereas the Allies, we're just stamping it out, and General Motors and Westinghouse and GE are just running off the line. And so your tanks were better than ours.
Yeah.
For the most part, your airplanes were better than ours, but we had the numbers.
Yeah.
Because we didn't put in the effort, we didn't perfect it,
Yeah.
we just make it work and make it happen.
If this is what end also World War II quicker than because America outmanufactured Germany. As simple as that,
You could have the
Which was a good thing, don't get me.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
It turned out always perfect,
But you can have the greatest tank in the world, but if you only have one and we got 500,
Exactly.
you may take out 350 of them, but the rest of them will still come and win the combat. And so that's one of that over-engineering and the quest for perfection, that's one of the things that cost the Third Reich the war, was because you guys couldn't produce your planes fast enough, you couldn't produce your tanks fast enough, let alone the Navy.
Yeah, they had also the first jet engine, the Messerschmitt had the first jet engine, Yeah.
B-2 rocket.
into
NASA space program.
Exactly.
People don't realize that we were able to when we sent the first man to the moon, the NASA technology and most of our scientists were expats from Germany. We got their
Möbius and Werner von Braun.
We basically got the best minds in German science and brought them over here.
Yeah, and the Russians had the plans, Yeah, the Russians had the plans, and the Americans had the people. Yeah. See, this is exactly, we talk about constantly the same thing, This is always based on discipline, on doing the right things, This is constantly essential, if you want to succeed at some time, at anything in later life. There is just no other way,
Yeah.
And I see so many instances. I wish the parents would be more forceful when it comes down to that. How? I mean, if I be a stupid parent, I cannot raise a smart kid. I mean, as simple as that. Unless I look for help, but you still have to be smart enough to find the right help. If you be stupid, you not look for. It's all. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think it's the breakdown of the modern day family structure that's causing a lot of these problems, because a lot of younger kids especially, they're growing up in single family homes.
This is amazing what a human brain, children, what they're capable to if they've been trained the right way and be guided the right way. There are no stupid people in the world if they have been guided the right way. They just have not the people behind who guide them in the direction,
And not to oversimplify it, but we're all animals.
Oh, of course.
And you can see the same thing with...
We all stupid, you can say we all stupid,
And you can see the same thing with a good dog owner and a horrible dog owner.
Exactly.
If someone takes the dog and spends time with it, teaches it what to do and what not to do, how to behave, and where to use the bathroom and whatnot, that puppy grows up to be a well-behaved dog.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who just ties it to a rope, throws it in the front yard, the dog's going to bite people, the dog's going to have anxiety.
Right.
And once again, not to oversimplify it, but children are the same way. If you leave a child to its own devices and you don't educate it and you don't teach it what's right and wrong, then you're going to have two completely different children.
We have in my hometown a very talking about dogs, a very successful dog club. You know, in my hometown, they have about maybe 100 members or maybe more, and they have all the kennels outside on the clubhouses, where all the dogs, whenever they came, they put them in the kennels, and then the owners go in the clubhouse and have their drink. They're always the same dog who make a lot of noise, and they're always the same dogs who do not make noise. And you know why? That's up to the owners. They know exactly in the clubhouse when a dog makes noise. They know exactly who it is. And this is idiot's dog. They compare the dog with the owner, or vice versa.
Because it's the owner's interaction, the way they take care of that dog.
Exactly.
The dog.
They let it still happen, or not told them the right thing, you know. Yeah.
And once again, a teacher can tell you the same thing.
Same thing.
Here's Susie, her brother's Jim. I had Jim 2 years ago. He was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so, there's a good chance Susie's going to be a nightmare because you have the same parent as Jim who wasn't around.
Yeah.
Whereas there's Bobby. Bobby's a great student. I had him 3 years ago. Here comes his sister.
Yeah.
The likelihood that his sister is going to be good, just like he was, because of the parents.
Yeah. You know what my philosophy is about when we talk about age? My philosophy is, if you want to progress in age, is what we all have in mind, getting as old as possible, right? So, well, the most important thing, you have genes, what you inherit from your parents, and you cannot change them.
Sure.
They are there. With them has to agree. The number two issue is how much you abuse your body by drinking a lot or not enough. Drinking a lot, how to abuse your body. I mean, if you like it or not, this is facts, And number three, how lucky we are. We can die on each corner in an accident, and you can be the most healthiest person, This is my three versions of when it comes down to age,
Absolutely. And as you just said, you're not promised tomorrow. Clearly, how you treat your body is one thing, but there's always a chance.
Yeah.
And I'm sure seeing a lot of the things you saw as a child, especially when it came to war, yes, training helps in war, but a lot of it is chance.
Yeah.
Whether that bullet hits you or the guy next to you.
Right.
And so I'm sure seeing that amount of destruction and horrors that you experience, that probably made you take on the outlook that life is a gift,
right,
and that your future's up to you.
And you should never take it for granted, no matter what it is, Yeah.
So many people use their past as an excuse why they can't succeed in the future. Yet you come from a generation and from areas that were literally some of these small towns were wiped off the map.
Yeah.
A lot of the Jewish families, their families were taken from them.
Right.
And they had two choices.
Right.
Dwell on it.
Right.
Or for the sake of the family, their name, move past it, try to achieve and make a legacy.
Right.
And it seems like nowadays, with the younger generation, and my generation included, so many people want to take the victim mentality to justify and give them a excuse not to try and strive for the future because I can't succeed. X happened to me when I was a kid, or this happened to me. And it's like, well, that's horrible shit.
Yeah.
It may affect parts of you and how you feel about things, but instead of making that hold you down, use that as a propellant to push you into a better future. And I've seen households where you have 3 siblings, they all had the same childhood, they had the same horrible parents, and one of them will hold on to that childhood and use that to justify their poor actions, their drinking, their drug use, whatever. And the other 2 siblings will look at that bad past and realize they want more out of life, more for their children, and they use that to get away from that life. And it's just so weird that you have 3 or 4 people from the same family and how drastically the outcome is different simply based on how they take their childhood and their past and either dwell on it and hold on to it as an excuse because they truly just don't want to try. They don't want to go out and bust their ass. It's just easier to say, well, because this happened to me, woe is me.
Yeah.
And it kills me to see people not utilize their potential. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we have is fewer and fewer people realize what they're capable of doing. And I think if everybody realizes no matter where they're at in life, they're capable at least 30% more. Whether you're successful or you're not, if you're successful, you probably get a little further down the line. If you're not successful, you can get further up the line. But I just think it seems like people are starting to lose appreciation or even awareness of the potential that other people have in them. And I think that's very dangerous as well. We as, this is getting a little off to the side, but I just wish more people would realize that they're capable of so much more. And a lot of it doesn't take a whole hell of a lot of effort.
Yeah. The capability is so great. The capability is even so great, it's even undetectable. You cannot detect capability. Where do you know where your boundaries are? You don't know this.
Yeah.
You not know it. Not even if you try to extend your whatever it is, your boundary in all areas. You don't even know where the end is. But in the meantime, if you do the right things, you realize you do something which is the right way to go in order to succeed, And this will happen. And if people are smart enough and not getting crazy, they have unbelievable success and go a lot of problems out of the way. Yeah.
Instead of being jealous of someone having something you don't, try to learn, hey, what do I need to know?
You can also see it as an inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. Instead
of negative and positive all the time.
Yeah, instead of hating them for what they have, appreciate it and try to, like we said before, you can either try to associate with more successful people and learn what they have learned, take whatever knowledge you're willing to give you, or you can just be jealous of them and say, the hell with them.
That helps them to get nowhere, exactly. I'm so happy for everybody who succeed, who are happy, who are just doing the right things in life. This is, for me, fantastic ever. This is the kind of people I like to associate with, not with negative problems, Yeah, I like people who are be above this kind of thing, this kind of, So, You know what Albert Einstein said?
What's that?
Albert Einstein said, if you want a happy hour, go to sleep. If you want a happy day, go fishing. And if you want a happy year, make sure you have at least enough money to live on this. And if you want, most important, a happy life, do what you do every day and like what you do.
And I think those are perfect words to go out on. Thank you for your time, Fritz.
Thank you.
It was very educational. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we will check with everybody next week. Thanks for tuning in to the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.